Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Tacoma Cyclist. I am the Tacoma Cyclist and with me as always is my sidekick, the Boogeyman. Today we're going to be reviewing this. The 2015 Ridley Fenix with SRAM Force 22. Now the first thing you'll notice is the Boogeyman and I actually have pretty similar bikes here. Normally this would be because he's copying me, but in this particular case it's actually that I'm copying him. He had outgrown his bike, as he's prone to do. He tends to grow quite a bit, and we needed to move him on to another road bike that was going to do well for his next several racing seasons. So in this particular case we looked at several bikes for him and we settled on the Ridley Fenix, which we're quite happy that we did. And frankly, the pricing on it was so good that I decided to go ahead and get one for myself as well, because it turned out to be a fantastic bike. We'll first explore the Boogeyman's build here, and as you can see, the bike behind me is his. It's a little too small for me, although honestly, the way that it's shaped, I could actually ride that bike if I were to just pop the seat post up. You'll notice that the Boogeyman tends to prefer a red and black build. They seem to suit him pretty well. So this bike is actually outfitted relatively stock from the website, and in this case, we bought this bike from Competitive Cyclist. They had such a very good deal on this bike that we couldn't pass it up, and in fact was what helped us to be able to buy two of these bikes. Frankly, the purchase price of this bike was such that it was almost like buying the group set and getting the frame and everything else for free, or vice versa, buying the frame and getting the group set for free. So we really just couldn't pass this deal up, and again, very happy that we did. His bike is built out with standard configuration. It's got a zip service course cockpit, so he's got zip bars, zip stem, and zip seat post, all of which are the service course line and are aluminum. He's got a Physique Arione versus saddle, which has a nice channel down the middle for comfort. And in this particular case, you'll notice on the bike, it's outfitted with Head Ardennes LT Plus wheels. Again, another opportunity from Competitive Cyclists that we were able to pick up those wheels at a very good discount, and frankly didn't add much to the price of the bike. The componentry on the bike overall is stock Force 22. Force 22 shifters and brakes, Force 22 crankset, and Force 22 rear derailleur. The only thing on this bike that isn't Force 22 is the Ultegra cassette. The cassette is an Shimano Ultegra cassette 14 to 28, and the reason for that is because he has juniors gearing restrictions that he has to meet for all of his races. We didn't want to have to do any blocking out of any gears, so that cassette works. SRAM doesn't currently offer a 14 to 28 cassette, so we're looking in the Shimano line, and it of course pairs up just fine. A couple finishing touches on the bike really bring some pop of color to it to help differentiate his bike from mine, and that is the red Physique bar tape, which is actually a kind of a grippy leather-like bar tape, and it's fantastic. Doesn't offer a lot of padding, but it offers great color, great cleaning. It doesn't soak up a lot of moisture, so it's fantastic for a lot of things. If you need additional padding, it's one of those where you can wrap something underneath of it as well. His bottle cages are Blackburn carbon fiber bottle cages in a bright red, and if you look very closely, you'll see some nice bright red titanium salsa skewers in there that we were able to pick up as well. So nice little pops of color to differentiate his bike from mine. Moving on to my bike, it's a little bit different configuration. While I stuck with the SRAM Force group set overall, there are a few different modifications that I've made here. First is that I opted for a SRAM Red 22 crank. And the reason that is because, number one, it didn't cost a whole lot extra. It added a little bit of savings in weight, and it also gave me the opportunity to go with a 5236 chainring set, which in this area is very beneficial. I've been riding with a 5339 for quite some time now on my SRAM Force on my crit bike, and it works great, but on some of the longer hill climbs you can just get out of gearing pretty fast, especially those where we're covering 5, 7, 8,000 feet of elevation gain in a single ride. You can get pretty tired riding with a 5339 and a 12 to 25 cassette. The cockpit on my bike is a little bit of a mixture of hodgepodge different parts that I've assembled together on this. The stem is a Zip Service Course SL, and it's in 100 millimeter length. The bars are 3T Aero Nova bars that are carbon fiber and have an aerodynamic shape to them. Some of these bits of component I will be reviewing separately in later reviews, so I'm not going to touch on them too much other than just to point out the fact that they exist. The seat post on mine is actually a Williams carbon fiber seat post, and the saddle is a Physique Arione VSX with the carbon fiber rails. In this particular case, I've also decided to go with Blackburn bottle cages, and I've chosen to go with Data Elementi bright fluorescent orange bar tape. It's a nice bar tape that's rather spongy, gives you some great padding, and frankly it matches my insanely bright orange shoes. We had seen quite a few reviews of Ridley bikes online, but not too many of the Ridley Fenix. We saw plenty for the Noah and we saw plenty for the Helium, both of which offer niche categories of bikes within their line. The Helium is their extremely lightweight bike, and the Noah is their aerodynamic bike. But where the Fenix fits in is a little bit different. They classify it as a classics bike, and by that they say it's a relaxed geometry. They say that it offers some comfort while riding over cobbles or over rough terrain, and they say that it's a little heavier, maybe a little stiffer in some areas, a little softer in other areas. What I find about this bike is that it's actually a good mixture of everything. It's not particularly heavy like the Noah can be. It's not particularly light like the Helium can be. It's stiff, but it's stiff in the right areas. It's a little bit soft in areas, but it's not soft in any way that would make you feel like you're not getting enough power transfer to the bike. That's one of the reasons we particularly chose this bike, is it's a good all-around bike. You can climb on it, you can sprint on it, you can ride cobbles on it, you can take it in a crit, and frankly, it's strong enough that even if you wreck it, it's probably going to be okay at the end of the day. I wouldn't want to wreck some of these extremely lightweight bikes and be out a couple $1,000s. These bikes can take quite a beating, and that's partly because of their diamond-shaped tube shapes that they put in there, which has a little bit of additional reinforcement. Now, one of the things that we've read on some of the reviews is that these bikes are heavy. I don't know what the definition of heavy in a bike is, but I can tell you that my previous bike, or my current crit bike, the bike that I'm going to use to kind of thrash and beat up when I want to, weighs in just a little over 16 pounds, 16.25 pounds, 16.5 pounds, depending upon what accessories we put on that bike. The Boogeyman came from an aluminum Bianchi, a great starter bike for a road bike, a very small bike, but it weighed in originally over 20 pounds. Once we replaced a couple components on it as they started to wear out, like the stamped steel chain rings, we were able to get that down into the upper 18, lower 19 range. We will weigh these bikes shortly, but I can tell you from my perspective, they don't rank in as a heavy bike. They're not ultra light. You're not going to get a 14-pound build on these things, but you're not talking about a particularly heavy bike either. So we picked these bikes up as a Christmas present. Well, actually, I picked it up as a Christmas present and had to sit there and stare at it for about 2 months in my office while I was actually waiting for Christmas and getting really anxious to ride the thing. I was good, and I didn't touch it for the entire 2 months other than to play with it, but certainly didn't ride it. We did go out on Christmas morning, and after we got the bikes dialed in for us, we took a little ride around the neighborhood. And the very first thing we noticed about those bikes was
power.
Power. They transfer power amazingly. You put the pedal down and the bike just goes forward. And, you know, of course that's what you expect from a bike. We don't have a whole lot of experience in dealing with a whole lot of different bikes out there, but I can tell you that I've ridden maybe a half a dozen different bikes, and all of them feel significantly different. I've always been kind of surprised at how big of a difference you can have in the quality and the speed feel of a bike. First thing we noticed again, we put the foot down and the bike just launched forward. And the more you put it down, the more responsive it was. So overall, we were absolutely thrilled with the amount of power that we were able to get out of this bike. We put it on a hill climb that's right behind our house that ratchets up to about a 17%, and it was just amazing how quickly the bike just launched up the hill. At no point did it ever feel like a heavy bike. We've seen a few different decal and paint configurations for the Ridley Fenix, and of course you can get it with disc brakes or rim brakes. We opted to go for rim brakes because we wanted to bring over our existing wheels onto these platforms. And the paint scheme in this particular case is black on white, or white decals on a black bike. I've seen black, white, and red. I've seen blue, white, and red. I really like the clean lines of the black and white. It looks fantastic. I'm not sure if they sell different colors to different retailers or whatnot. I haven't seen this color scheme anywhere else on Ridley other than through Competitive Cyclist, but I really do like the very clean lines of the black on the white. It gives you the ability to accessorize and make the bike whatever color you want to by adding bar tape or bottles or bottle cages or seats, anything that you want to do to add a pop of color. And I think it looks really clean and really fantastic. Of course, with it being a matte black finish, as the Boogeyman learned earlier today, it's actually pretty hard to clean. You can clean it and clean it and clean it, but you're going to still see little tiny marks in the paint every time you get a chance to clean it and get up there and really look close. We put a little coat of wax on it whenever we clean it just to make sure that it's always looking nice and smooth and keeps that matte finish. One of the interesting things about Ridley bikes is they're actually pretty well known for upsizing their bikes. That is, if you buy medium, it's similar to a large in another brand of bike. Of course, if you look at the geometry specs online, you see a 54 centimeter frame, you think 54 centimeters, and that's about correct. Typically, I ride a 53, 54. I've got a 32-inch inseam. I'm a 5'10" when I'm wearing shoes. So 54 centimeter, 53 centimeter works out pretty well for me. In this case, I got the medium. I was kind of on the fence, and if you look at Ridley's site, they'll tell you that as a 5'10" individual, that I could either go with the small or with the medium. In this case, I went with the medium, and I don't really regret it. I was a little bit afraid when I first got the bike and put it up next to my other bike, which is a 53 centimeter, and this bike did look a little bit bigger. But honestly, at the end of the day, sure, I don't have my seat post sticking out of the seat mast significantly, but it's certainly still, I do get a good drop to the bars. One of the reasons that this particular Ridley, the Fenix, also has kind of that bigger geometry is because it has a very tall head tube. And ideally that's because this is their Gran Fondo bike or their comfort bike, but the reality is you can still get a nice aero low position simply by slamming the stem or even bringing it just a few notches down and having maybe one spacer below it. In my case, I've actually slammed the stem. In his case, we want to give him a little bit of room to grow, and we don't want him to develop spine problems right off the back. So we've left it raised up just a tad. But you can see that the head tube itself is pretty tall. On his, he's got an extra small, which equates to about a 50 centimeter, 49 to 51, somewhere in that range, depending upon which measurement you want to take. In his case, for the moment, we have to slam that seat post about as far down as it goes. But that's okay. As far as I'm concerned, this kid's growing a whole lot. He seems to add about an inch to his height every other week or so. So having the ability to bring that seat post up and make the bike fit him, and then of course adjust his angle over time, works out pretty well. So the extra small works quite well. For him, it should last him another 4 or 5 years, as long as it doesn't wreck it and crack it or anything. But again, it's a really solid bike, so I seriously doubt that's going to be the case. So as mentioned before, I'm going to walk through the build of my particular bike, and then we will look at the Boogeyman's bike as well. So as you can see, I've topped the bike with a Physique Arione VSX saddle, which has a very deep channel through it. I've opted for that saddle over the VS just because of that deep channel. The Boogeyman doesn't need that deep of a channel. I do. I've got a Williams Ionic seat post, which is secured by the Forza, which is the Ridley house brand seat clamp, and that's a very good seat clamp overall, very sturdy, well designed, lines up perfectly. Obviously you can see that I've got Zip 303s on this, and I'm running Michelin Pro 4 service course tires with those. Not the lightest choice overall for wheel and tire combination, but it's a good overall wheel for this type of bike, especially for most road races. I never find myself getting upset at the weight of the wheel or the rotational mass of the wheel, and I've never had a problem with wind. I will point out that when I go to weigh these bikes, I'll weigh these bikes with the wheels they come with, or the wheels that we have them configured with, as well as our race wheels. And I will race on the Zip 303s from time to time, but I will also race on our carbon tubulars from time to time, and I will weigh them with both the carbon tubulars and the Zip 303s. Bottle cages, in this case, are the Blackburn UD. On the Boogeyman's, he has a slightly different Blackburn, and we'll get to that shortly. Pedals are a Shimano Ultegra carbon fiber pedal. Again, not the lightest choice, but a great stable option for this bike. Crankset and chain rings are the SRAM Red. This is the only place where I departed from the SRAM Force 22 group set. I did go with the SRAM Red. On this bike, we'll both be putting on power meters on his bike and on my bike shortly, but we will do those in a separate review. The rear derailleur and rear mech, SRAM Force 22, and you'll notice that all of this is internal cable routing. The cable routing on this bike is actually very logical. It feeds in very straight lines. There are no hard bends like a lot of internal cable routings will do sometimes nowadays. So there aren't any pinched lines. It's actually very easy to fish cable in and out through these things. The stem, 100 millimeter Zip Service Course SL, and that feeds into a rather wing-shaped 3T Aero Nova carbon fiber bar. A great bar overall. It gives me a lot of different options. I'm going to review these bars separately because I think that they're worthy of their own review. Interesting thing about these bars, when you get going over 30 miles an hour, you will hear the aerodynamics of this bar. It sounds like it's whistling in the wind. It really sounds like a wing passing through the air, which is great. And then that bar tape is the Data Elementi bright fluorescent orange. And again, it's a perfect match for my shoes. So if the Boogeyman will pick up my Giro shoes directly behind him, hold them up next to the bars, you will see a fantastic match. You certainly don't have to worry about not being seen while you're riding this bike wearing those shoes. Thank you, Boogeyman. Now on to his bike. Okay, on to the Boogeyman's bike. Again, we'll talk about the saddle here. This is the Physique Arione VS saddle. A small channel through there helps to protect those sensitive areas, and it is a very comfortable saddle overall. We actually transferred this saddle from his old bike, so this was a great opportunity just for us to save a little bit of money and reuse something from his previous bike. The carbon fiber bottle cages, the Blackburn CF bottle cages, are actually marginally lighter than the other UD bottle cages that I have on my bike. Relatively well color matched to his bright red Physique bar tape, which actually is very well color matched to his Giro helmet and his Giro shoes, which he'll hold up next to those as well. And you can see we're doing like every good cyclist should, and color matching only certain parts of the bike. So again, full Force 22 group set, with the exception of that rear cassette, and that rear cassette again has that 14 to 28 Ultegra cassette on it. Force 22 crank set up front with 50-34 chain rings, and in this case the head Ardennes wheels, and those have the Vittoria Open Corsa CX tires on those, which are a nice high thread count cotton casing tire. Roll fantastically, and are this case is a 25 millimeter wide tire. With those head Ardennes LT Plus wheels, you need those wider tires and lower air pressure, and this bike, with that lower air pressure and those wider tires, rides like a dream. So again, his cockpit, fully zip service course. He's got a zip service course stem in an 80 millimeter, zip service course aluminum bars, zip service course seat post. And you may or may not be able to see from this shot, but he's got his Garmin out front mount there for his Garmin 510 as well, that he can so he can see his numbers while he's riding. One nice little touch on the back of his bike here is we have a custom 3D printed number holder. So when race season starts, he can put his number into that custom printed number holder, and it will look ultra classy. One other really nice feature about this bike that I haven't seen on anybody else's is the rubber grommet on the stem cap here. It's just a nice little touch to keep your stem cap bolt from either getting a little bit of rust in there or just kind of getting gross. And it frankly just completes the bike nicely. It's just a nice touch overall. I'm going to weigh these bikes a couple different ways. First is in their stock configuration as they are, which is how we train on these bikes. And in some cases how we'll race on these bikes as well. So as it is in stock configuration, this is 7.85 kilograms, or, I went right past it, 17.29 pounds. Not ultra light, but at the same time, this is with a full aluminum set of semi-aero wheels, slightly heavier tires. Those Vittorias are a little on the heavy side, and then of course all the accessories. Okay, and weighing mine in training configuration here, 7.525 kilograms, or 16.5 pounds roughly. Again, I don't know what people classify as a super lightweight bike, but I've seen some reviews saying these are heavy bikes overall. I don't consider 16.5 pounds with some relatively heavy wheels on them to be a heavy bike by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm overall pretty impressed. And again, this is in training configuration. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's going to look like in racing configuration with some lightweight tubular tires on it, or tubular wheels. And weighing in the Boogeyman's bike, with the race wheels in place, that's a 7.36 kilograms weight, which in pounds, 16.2 pounds. So again, I've seen some reviews that call this a heavy bike. There are a lot of places where you could recognize some weight savings, and they add up very quickly and very easily to make yourself a very lightweight bike. Weighing in my bike with a pair of carbon tubular race wheels, this bike weighs in at 7.14 kilograms, or a rather skinny 15 3/4 pounds. At the end of the day, I think it's pretty obvious that we really like these bikes. Of course, as you've probably noticed, we don't typically give a lot of bad reviews. That being said, there are some products out there that we have reviewed that we don't like. Just check out a review for our Sunlight fender, not a particularly favorite product of ours. However, we really do genuinely love this bike. Both of us have put several hundred miles, probably over 1,000 miles on it in the past month and a half, and have thoroughly enjoyed every moment we've been on this bike. The truth of the matter is, if you like your bike, if you like the way your bike looks, you're going to ride your bike a lot more. This bike is beautiful. Even if it didn't ride well, it's still beautiful. The craftsmanship is fantastic. I think a lot of the pictures online that we've seen don't really do it justice. It kind of distorts what the diamond-shaped tube looks like. It distorts what the front of the bike looks like, makes it look weird based on some angles. But the reality is in person, the bike looks fantastic. Now, as far as the ride quality of the bike, again, we've been genuinely impressed with the amount of power that you get out of it when you put your foot down on this bike. The power transfer, it just seems to beg for more. When you're at the bottom of the hill and you start putting in the power to it, you will feel the bike react. Regardless of what wheels you're on, you're going to feel the bike react, and that's really impressive. Perhaps more impressive is the ability of Ridley to blend the idea of stiffness and compliance. If you look at their literature, their materials online, they tell you that the bike is stiff from here down and compliant from here up. Now, I don't know how they would do that, other than, of course, different carbon fiber layups, but they've clearly done the job. You can ride on this bike all day for hours at a time and not get beaten up. However, when you really put that power down, again, you feel that transfer, you feel that instant gratification that comes from feeling what you put into the bike come out of the wheels, and that's fantastic. I don't know how they did that. Color me impressed, but they did a fantastic job. Now, looking at the literature online, it says it's a mix of 24 and 30-ton high modulus fiber. On the sticker here, it actually just says 24-ton high modulus fiber, regardless of what the situation is. They have obviously done something with the layup here that creates the ability to have a stiff bike that is also forgiving and can take some really rough roads. Where we live here in Tacoma, we actually kind of joke about it because the moment you enter the city limits of Tacoma, you can instantly tell the roads, you can instantly tell you that you're back in the city of Tacoma. The roads are terrible. If you're a drunk driver in Tacoma, you can tell because you're the only one going in a straight line. You're hitting all the potholes, you're not paying attention. If you're the sober driver, you're the one that's swerving all over the place, missing the potholes. On this bike, you can hit everything and it doesn't jar, it doesn't hurt you. It's pretty forgiving overall. I don't know how they do it. One thing I do know, of course, is they do have this modular design to their seat stay. So they have the rounder tubes here that flatten out here. They're still kind of a chunky seat stay. I know the tendency is to go towards a thinner seat stay nowadays. This one is a chunkier style seat stay, but the way that they shape it gives you that vertical compliance when you hit bumps. And you can really feel it. It almost feels like a springboard when you hit that bump. It really cushions it quite well. Interestingly enough, I've read a lot of research about what bikes you can and can't use on trainers. There are some manufacturers that say if you're riding a carbon bike of ours, don't put it on a trainer where it locks your rear wheel in. I reached out to Ridley and asked them that very question. What do you feel about us using this on the Tacx Bushido Smart Trainer that we've reviewed elsewhere? Their simple reply to us was, hey, there's no problem with doing that. Go ahead and do it. Just make sure you use the skewer that came with the Tacx Bushido Smart, which is just good advice anyway. But I asked them, is there any risk of cracking? Does it damage the warranty or does it impact the warranty in any way? And they said, absolutely not. These things are designed to be capable of putting up with that. So they don't have to worry about stress fractures from riding this in a trainer. Ridley plainly will tell you that they have no problems with that. Thanks again for stopping by and checking out our reviews on Tacoma Cyclist. Also, be sure to check out on Zwift. You'll see Tacoma Cyclist and Boogeyman riding around on Zwift from time to time. Give us a thumbs up and we'll return the favor. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share these videos with your friends. Thanks.